You're listening to Puma Podcast.
You're listening to Teka Teka. Another Puma Podcast production, Go Hard Girls, is taking over today's episode. Sports reporter Lui Morales speaks to Ellie Haenel, the first openly trans athlete in Philippine football. This is her story.
Hi, I'm Ceej Tantengco Malolos, and we're back with another episode made possible by the Go Hard Girls grants. We're now in our 5th year of telling the stories of Philippine athletes, and the biggest change we can make? It's sharing our platform to help others tell women's stories too. With the support of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation International Development and the Women in News and Sports Initiative, we're giving 10 Go Hard Girls grants this year to deserving storytellers. Today's grantee is a talented colleague of mine from sports journalism who also attended our Go Hard Girls workshop last year.
Hi, this is Lui Morales. I'm a PR practitioner by day, but my real passion is sports. For the most part, I use my words on paper. But this time, I take on the challenge of using my own voice to amplify women's stories.
I'm proud of Louie for the story you'll hear today, and I'm thankful to our guest athlete for sharing her story. As you listen to this episode, no matter what feelings you have about trans athletes at the moment, all I ask is that you listen, really hear her, with kindness in your heart. All right, Louie, take it away.
When people think about sports, it is usually filled with moments of glory, of gold medals, of championships, and of wins. But there are also a lot of challenges and adversities. The beauty of sport is found in people thriving and powering through in spite of them. In this episode, I have the honor of sharing with you the unique and empowering story of Ellie Haenel, the first openly trans athlete in women's football in the Philippines. Fueled by a childhood dream of playing professionally, Ellie has fought to find her place in sports. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that today's episode discusses themes that may be sensitive for some listeners. Please be advised that this episode contains discussions of homophobia, transphobia, abuse, and other forms of discrimination and violence. If you may be triggered by these topics, we suggest listening with care. And if you're going through something similar, please reach out to support networks. For those who are good to continue listening, let's go ahead and dive into Ellie's story, starting with how she fell in love with football.
I think this is a very important story to start off with how I really fell in love with it. And I think it starts with me as a little kid. I was 7, undiagnosed with autism. My parents didn't know, and I couldn't make a lot of friends, and I couldn't really do well socially. Or I also had a lot of trouble just being a human being. And it's important to know, I came from Manila. I lived near the Riles, near the tracks. We weren't very rich. We were quite a poor family, and no one in my family was an athlete or anything like that. And we all just kind of played video games. Were on the computer. So I was very different there. I discovered soccer when I was 13, and I had a very big video game addiction before that, and that was my way of coping as someone. And one day I played too many video games, and my laptop actually broke, and I didn't know what to do. And our PE class there, they were going to teach us soccer. It was my first time ever playing soccer, doing anything like that. And I remember lining up to we were taking penalty kicks, and that was like the first thing we ever did. And I remember the very first penalty kick I took, and I ran up, kicked a ball. The form was really bad, kicked it with my toe, but it went in off the post, which is like, for a penalty kick, that's perfect. That's like almost unbeatable. And everyone was like, that was amazing, you did such a good job. And that, for me, that was the first time I ever heard good job, which is it's quite sad, but that was the first time someone's ever told me I did a good job. And as a kid, that meant so much to me. and that got me really addicted to playing soccer.
Now Ellie has gone far from that small child that first stepped onto the pitch. Currently, she's playing with the Bybit Women's League champion team Secret FC. In her league debut, she scored a goal to lead her team to win the match, before ultimately winning the title in her first season. But before she found herself in this position, there were a lot of challenges that she encountered, especially when she began to discover her identity as a trans woman in 2020.
When I turned 20, my father kicked me out of the house, and I had to live by myself at my uncle's house. And that's when I had my first job, and that's when I got my money for the first time. And I remember buying my first thing of makeup. I bought foundation, and it was just like soccer. It felt good, and I followed that feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, I like this. This feels good, right? And that's when I first really started. But it took me, I think, almost a year, 2 years of kind of being avoidant, or like kind of being really scared to think of myself as a woman. It's really terrifying, and it understandably, it took me a long time, because that meant losing my family, losing a lot of my friends, losing job opportunities, losing like my standing as a cis man, and all those privileges. I think a big part of it is like I had to decide, do I want to be a woman and live as myself, or do I want to be able to pursue the life that I want to have, or like a life that has the privileges or even basic rights, like to be able to use a public bathroom. And yeah, I think that was my whole journey. So I had to really decide whether I wanted to be happy, or and sacrifice all those privileges and dreams.
One of those dreams was the dream to become a professional football player. Being a trans woman meant that opportunities were suddenly few for Ellie, and at one point, it felt like there were none at all.
I used to play on open place in Cavite, and I had joined them as a cis man. The people knew me there as a cis man, but then after some time, I started hormone therapy and started to become more feminine and started to look like a woman. It was scary, because like now I really, it was just like, I'm gonna go now to a road that leads nowhere. That's how I saw it. It's like, I'm gonna become a trans woman and I'm not gonna be an athlete anymore.
As Ellie grappled with staying true to her identity and her love for sport, it was a story of extraordinary athletes that led her right back onto the pitch.
So I had taken a break for 6 months, or half a year, about to just start my hormone. HRT is hormone replacement therapy, where I take estrogen and I take testosterone blockers, and I see an endocrinologist regularly to make sure that my levels are equal to a cis woman's. And I did that for about a year, and I would play soccer at home, but I just mostly given up on that. I just worked. But that was also the year that the Philippine women's football team got to the World Cup, and that was amazing to see them playing.
Egeshvik right now, high ball to Serena Bolden, and Bolden gets the first goal for the Philippines in the FIFA Women's World Cup. Take a look what that means. She's done it in the past, and she does it again.
It was just great, because you see, I starting to become a Filipino woman and realizing how difficult that is, how hard it is for our psyche as Filipino women to be confident. And I saw these women that are confident, and making decisions on the field, dribbling, showing these traits of like excellence. And that was just like it for me. I was like, I need to be in this team, or at least I need to be like these women, like, and seeing women like me, brown women like me. I went back out to my first open play. I moved to a different one in Alabang, and I went as myself. My pronouns, I stopped going by my dead name, and I was really surprised. And everyone called me by my pronouns, by my name, and I was like, oh my god, I could at least play recreationally as a girl. I thought it was over. And I kept doing that, building my confidence, and yeah, going back to playing soccer again.
Ellie was just one of the many women inspired by the Filipinas in their empowering journey to the FIFA Women's World Cup, which marked the first time a Philippine team competed at the elite tournament. But even as she found hope to get back into the sport, the challenges weren't about to stop as she navigated her new life as a trans athlete. The biggest hurdle for Ellie? Finding a team and league that was ready to accept her as trans.
Some girls went up to me and said, hey, you're really good, you should come join our team. And I was like, oh my god, people want me on their team. Like, this could really happen. Like, not only can I play, but I can play women's football. So that happened, and sadly, like, they got back to me and said that like their team or their league wasn't ready, and that sent me back a bit. I was like, oh, okay. They told me like, okay, maybe the country isn't ready yet. The whole thing was finding a team that was willing to give me a chance was hard. It took me again another half a year. It wasn't until this year, around March, that I joined Secret FC's women's training, and they were like, hey, you should come up, join our team. And at that point, I was already like, hey, cautious. I'm not sure if this is going to work. But like the last time, I always volunteered that I was trans. I always volunteered as much info as I could. I wanted to be as upfront and honest, and I really showed them that, like, hey, I'm trying to do this seriously. Like, I'm not just like some person just going in. That was really hard, because to be told, like, when you ask people if you can play soccer, like ask permission to be in women's soccer, you kind of ask, like, am I allowed to exist, like, as a trans athlete? And, you want to have your self-worth based on yourself, but you kind of, it really does have that effect where if they say no, it's kind of like people are saying, like, yeah, you don't deserve to be in women's sports. You are not a valid person. And that's so tiring, and that was so hard. But I really just, the Philippine women's team really just inspired me, and I was like, I'll give it a try. I'll put my self-worth in the line and see, like, maybe I'll do it. Right? And I waited a couple weeks. They talked to the Biped Women's League organizer and shared my details. I shared them my hormone tests. I shared them, like, even a screen recording of, the daily estrogen and regular T blockers that I'm taking. I shared all of those things, and thankfully they were like, yeah, you. And they took a look and decided, yeah. And that feeling, that day I cried. That day I cried so much, because that was like a big message for me that, like, I'm valid as a human being, and I get to have some part of my dream again. I think that was like, that really woke up a big part of me.
Thanks to Secret FC and the Biped Women's League, finally, the world was opening for Ellie as a trans woman. She could finally pursue her dream. But being accepted into her new team meant more than just having the chance to play on the pitch.
They told me, I'm a human being and I'm allowed to have dreams. And here's a way now that I can enact them. And I'm telling you, like, to be a human being without dreams, that's like, it's hard to even want to exist or to even, like, do anything. Right? But once you have that again, it really reignited something in me. I felt like that 13-year-old little girl again that wanted to play soccer, wanted to show their skills.
But as Ellie and other trans athletes begin to occupy their space in sports, conversations have led to hostility and judgment from other people. One of their biggest arguments is that trans women have an inherent advantage because they were assigned male at birth. You know, some of the conversations that people do have about trans women in sports, they talk about, that quote unquote that you guys have an advantage, or trans women,
Hmm.
they can't compete in women's sport
Yeah.
because they have advantage. And for you, as someone who has personally gone through that journey, you know what's your perspective on that, or what would you like to say to everyone that would say that, oh, actually you have an advantage, when in fact it might be even the opposite of that, considering your experience and what you had to go through in order to be to be able to play soccer in the first place.
It's a great question. Um, I think the first simple thing is like, I am an athlete, which means I want to be challenged. I don't want I don't want an advantage. I think that's extremely limiting and boring, and it's also completely untrue, right? So like a lot of people are like, oh, so people would just put on a dress and they go and play women's sports because it's easier. I think that is extremely untrue and very sexist, because women's sports is hard. But these women athletes are good. I think that the idea that only men can be good at sports and we have, they have an inherent advantage is it's an outdated and frankly, a very sexist belief. And here's the thing: to compete in women's sports, I would never join if I believed I had an advantage, because I don't want that. I don't want to play where I'm better inherently. Like, it's just not interesting to me. My goal as an athlete is to grow and to challenge myself. Like, I want to play against the best players and in an even field. Right? And so when I started going into women's sports or given a chance, I really wanted to take that seriously. I wanted to play fair. And yeah, on an Olympic level, there are standards for trans athletes to compete, right? We are being monitored, or at least in any competitive sport, there is a standard for our hormones, they have to be at a cis women's level, and you have to have at least, like, what is it, 1 or 2 years of hormone replacement therapy. And there's rules, and I follow those rules, and I believe in those rules. Right? And yeah, I think people think that, like, it's just, oh, I put on a dress and now I'm playing women's sports. Like, no, I actually took 2 years of hormone replacement therapy. I used to be, 140 pounds, 5'6". I used to be a weightlifter, and now I am actually 5'3" and 120 pounds, and my feet size are actually like 1.5 sizes smaller. So my body is not the same. My body it's certainly different, right? And um, I'm a lot weaker. I'm now lifting like 20% as I used to, and yeah, people don't understand that, like, when you transition to become a woman, you want to have a woman's body, right? That's the goal, and you do end up having that, right? And so it's like, okay, there's no there's there's no such thing as like a trans woman out there with an inherent advantage, because we don't want that. We're athletes.
It's not just science, though. All things considered, trans women might even be disadvantaged when it comes to competing in sports. Why, you might ask? Because they have to go through twice as much adversity to get to where they want to be.
Another thing is, like, trans women aren't even recognized legally as real women. We're not even protected from discrimination. Like, we don't have basic rights, and that's our lived experience, right? And so a lot of us are also, like, yeah, disowned by our parents. Suicide rates for trans people are very high. Homelessness rates are very high. And it's just not easy to be a trans woman. Like, to think of me out there, I'm not the norm. Like, a lot of us trans women are disadvantaged economically, and yeah, it's just not an easy life. Like, I don't think about like a trans woman out there that's like strong and happy and safe. We don't even have that basic, right? So like, and you need that to function like at a high level.
The conversation around trans athletes boomed during the 2024 Paris Olympics as well, where the Philippines actually had its first openly trans athlete competing, boxer Hergy Bakyadan. Hergy, who competed in the women's category, is a trans man who isn't undergoing hormone replacement therapy.
And here's Hershey Bakyadan, 29 years of age. Bakyadan is actually a trans man. He's not undergone any sort of gender reassignment therapy, so remains eligible for women's competition.
As a Filipino, Ellie drew hope from Hergy's story, even if they did have different approaches to their transition.
I think that was wonderful. I was very happy to see someone trans and also open and proud. It's not something that you see very often. So it just shows that trans excellence exists and we're out there, you know. I was like, yeah, we're here.
Despite the steps that society has taken forward in inclusivity in sports, there is still a long way to go. From Ellie's experience, even when things were at a high, everything could just as quickly come crashing down. Shortly after making her debut with Secret FC, the team proudly announced her inclusion in the team as a trans woman, all with her permission. But as Ellie found out, some people were still not ready for the conversation.
There were a lot of other challenges too, like when my league posted that I was the first trans woman athlete in the league, and they were proud. They're putting it up there as a good story, and you know that was supposed to be a very happy moment. And then right away the comments were filled with a lot of these angry people and men saying things like it's unfair to the real women, saying are you crazy, all these hurtful things. And you know, as a trans athlete, your validity as a person is always in question, and it's really exhausting to have to ask like, am I allowed? Like, am I even valid?
The challenges made her realize that even as the world has progressed some in recent years, it is still an uphill battle for trans athletes, especially in the Philippines. But with the support of people in her corner, Ellie was able to push through.
At that point, I posted that in my story, and I was like, guys, this is really hard. I don't know if I can do this, because I got really scared when all those hate comments came in, because there's a lot of violence against trans people, especially trans women, and I actually feared for my life and also my fiance's safety. And I had to ask the league to take that post down, even if it was beautiful. And I was talking about that in my story, and surprisingly, I was met with a lot of these messages from women athletes and soccer, other women's soccer teams. For example, Suicide Squad, a team that I played against and played. They reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, you know what? We don't like that response that happened. You know what? We're here for you, no matter what people say." And there's these other women from my team that, you know, I hadn't really talked to before, but they were like, "Hey, we don't want you to give up. Like, you actually inspire a lot of us, and you got to keep fighting." They were just really encouraging. And I was like, what? I didn't know I could inspire someone. I was just trying to play softball. And yeah, a lot of my trans community also reached out, and they were like, really just, hey, bro, you got to keep going. You're doing so much for us. You are, you know, they were just really encouraging. And you know, I really wanted to quit. I was like, it was like my life or my dream. But with the help of my community and a lot of these women, no, I was able to get back out there again and be like, you know what, I want to play. You're right. Let's do it safely, right?
Ellie was inspired by the rest of her community, knowing that each time she played her sport, she was also bringing the hopes and aspirations of her fellow trans and neurodivergent athletes. But being the first of any minority in sports has always been a struggle. Ellie's experience was no different. Even when she wasn't playing, there were times when she felt in danger.
When I think a lot about it, people like being the first openly trans soccer player in the country. It's honestly terrifying. But just because of all the violence. If it wasn't for all the violence against trans people, I'd be very excited, very happy. But minorities know this. When you're the first, it was never fun for the first black baseball player, right? The first woman president. It was an opportunity, but it was also really terrifying because to be the first brings you into the consciousness of people that are very uncomfortable. Right? And people react very differently. People can be mild and be like, discredit you, and people can be almost violent. People can want to murder you or get rid of your existence.
For people like Ellie, this is a reality that they face each day when they live as their authentic selves.
And I carry that when I go to soccer. For example, on my way to a tryout, because I couldn't use my live name in my taxi, I'm not going to mention the company, they saw my dead name, they saw I was a woman, and once they realized I was a trans woman, they started driving really erratically, and like I could tell they were really uncomfortable that I was there. And that's just my ride going to try out this, like, my existence could make people really scared, right? And that's really, like, that feels really awful. It feels, there's days that I will feel like disgusting. I will feel so invalid, like a monster, like all these news articles or people point us out to be, and those things really get to you. So the thing that I think a lot about when I go out there, I think about my 13-year-old self, and yeah, that little girl that just wanted to play soccer, and just really wanted to make their mom proud. And that's what I do. I remember my younger self, and then I also remember my 21-year-old self as a younger trans woman. And these young girls, there's a lot of people like me, not just people that are trans or autistic, but underprivileged, brown, scared, and they don't know if, when I was 18, I didn't know if I was going to make it to 20. I didn't know if I was going to be able to live past that age and even make it, right? And I didn't, I gave many times, I've given up on my dream. It was just, and I realized there's that little girl, and there are a lot of kids like me up there. And I imagine what it would be like if that little kid saw me playing now, scoring goals, making friends, being with other women as a trans woman. And that's just so much, that's so meaningful. And I'm willing to die for that girl, those other girls, and everyone out there. Because, what is a human without their dream, right? So, I think that really empowers me to keep trying. And I think I can say right now, even if it gets hard, I'm not going to stop. Because that's the whole point. I think that's the whole point of being a person. Being an athlete is to break boundaries, to grow, and to win. And that's what people are going to see out there. You're going to see a trans woman, autistic woman, athlete out there winning. And people are going to see, like, if I can do it, you can do it. If someone that's disadvantaged and someone like me can do it, like anyone can do it. And I think that's the whole point of sports. You want to see people like you succeed, and so every time I score a goal, it's not just for my little girl out there, it's for me. If people can see that.
Even if she is the first, a trailblazer in her journey, it didn't mean that Ellie was alone in reaching her dreams. Through all the good, the bad, and the ugly, it was her found family, friends, and teammates that provided the support she needed to stand her ground. On the top of your head, like, are there any particular, people within the sport, or maybe your circle of friends, your circle of community, your support system that, I guess was really pivotal in what you wanted to do, and how were they able to encourage you?
Most helpful, and I tell him I appreciate him a lot. From my coach at Secret FC, Coach Ace Babalan, he was the one who talked to me and checked with the league. He took initiative, right? He wasn't just like, oh, let's let someone else forget it. He was like, this woman wants to play. Let's see what we can do. And he's the one who talked to the league, right? And Carla Vicencio, who is the organizer of Vibit Women's League, they were also listening. They were open, and they talked, and they decided, and they looked. I think they were also maybe very aware that trans athletes there's a negative bias, and so they were able to look at more reputable sources and make a more informed decision about it. And yeah, these two people, they gave me my dream back, and I'm so thankful for y'all. And they still, Coach Ace is still my coach right now. Still very encouraging. It's a very great coach and a very great inclusive team. And yeah, I think what was very helpful there that a lot of people can learn with is like, yeah, if you're really chill, trans women are just women and they're athletes and we want to play, and yeah, it's just a normal experience. And I think it's such a low standard, but I think the nice thing is like Coach Ace treated me like I'm just another normal girl. And until now, if we are joining different leagues, he's always being discreet and also being honest with like the leagues that like, if we have a trans woman athlete, she has her credentials, she's following the standard, and he's always taking the initiative. And I think that's a really valuable thing. Is we can't just be like, oh yeah, let them play. Because I'll have teams that are like okay with me at a certain level, but I think until we have our basic rights or we are like already included by default, what we need from people is people that will take initiative to include us, right? And to really listen to us and treat us with like respect. And we have people that are very aware of the climate. And my fiance Perry is also someone that goes to all my trainings with me, makes sure that I'm safe, and also helps me because I'm autistic, so I need co-regulation. And yeah, my friends that were there for the tryout, they were there to support me. My trans friends, my queer friends, they were the ones. I was really proud to see a trans woman play soccer, and I think I wouldn't be going if it wasn't for them, because like I know this is for them too, and they tell me that, and I think it helps. That helps a lot. The trans community, y'all help me a lot by saying that like you're inspired or that this is valuable for you guys, because a lot of times I really just want to quit. It's very tiring, but knowing that my dream is a lot of other trans people's dreams is just really, it's just so valuable.
While Ellie is proud to represent the trans community, she is also a role model for neurodivergent athletes. Though it poses another challenge for her, it is one thing that she is ready to accept.
I think with like being neurodivergent, it's a lot about being trans. It's like we do need extra accommodation, which doesn't mean special treatment, like we're not being treated better, but we are being included, meaning there's like people that are willing to accommodate for us. It is pretty new for me as an autistic like soccer player, because for example, I'll have things like overstimulation. I'm very sensitive to noise, and it's also kind of hard for me socially still. I'm improving, but my fiance is there for me to help me with overstimulation, and also like to remind me to talk to my teammates. It's not that I don't talk, but I get really, for example, I get really overstimulated and I have to leave early. And my team will be like, Tara, let's get ESO after. And, if I wasn't regulated, I'd be like, no, it's okay, I'm going to go home. And my team might think that like, oh, she doesn't want to hang out with us. But really, it's just really loud, guys. And I think I think there's the social aspect too of being, neurodivergent. We might be seen as, very differently, and I think just, hearing stories like mine, or being open to know that like there are very different people that play sports. It's not just cis neurotypical people, but there are, weird neurodivergent people like me, and are in this space. And I would really love if people were to ask me, or to ask people like me, like, hey, what do you need for you to be more welcome? Because like, I think what I'm met with very often is like, people don't know how to like treat me. They hear like, I'm trans and I'm autistic, and people are very uncomfortable, and they're like, hey, I don't know what to do. Like, I guess I'll just leave you there, right? And I'd like to bridge that gap and say like, just ask me, right? If I think we could all become a lot closer if instead of that discomfort, there was curiosity. To be like, hey, what's it like for you to play soccer with us? You mentioned you're autistic, and we could really connect over that, right? But I think, that's what I'd like for people, which starts with ourselves, but also in the government, or at least like in a bigger sense, is to, be curious and ask what we need, what it's like for us.
Ellie believes that thoughts and discussions about trans women can also be treated in the same way. The conversations to be had will be quite difficult, but at the end of the day, it will be what helps us grow and acknowledge our feelings about the existence of trans people in sports.
In terms of like the public, and in terms of the media, recognizing trans women in sports, we are real people. These are our real lives and dreams. This is, you hear my story, and it wasn't just I put on a dress and I became a woman. It was lots of loss. I have lived as a woman in the Philippines. I've experienced sexism. I have been harassed and assaulted. I have lived a life, and it's not just that I didn't just get here and say I wanted to play women's sports. Like, this is a whole battle, and this is a whole story, right? And so when people just put me down as like, okay, I have for example, 0.5 second head start on cis women, like that doesn't matter, even if it was true. It's not, because there is so much more to me as a trans athlete and into my experience, right? And I don't think I would have gotten here without the help of my allies. Like, I think we want to encourage the allies out there, those people that are willing to listen. I want to encourage y'all to be like listening to these stories, being keen, even if we are from a society that was transphobic and homophobic, to be open to listening to people's stories, right? Because this is my honest story, right? And allyship is really helpful, because we have to work together and build our consciousness as a Filipino people to be inclusive and kind, and no longer avoidant about trans people.
Even as society tries to take a step in the right direction, the experience of trans women, especially in a country like the Philippines, will remain a mixed bag. But with her eyes on the bigger picture, Ellie continues to be ready to step up to the plate. I just wanted to say thank you, Ellie, for being who you are and being able to just really, show yourself to, inspire other people, and that's so brave, considering everything that has happened. Like when you stood up in that inclusion seminar where I first met you. That was such a
Yeah.
big thing, and it's important to do things scared as well. Like in life, there might be things that you want to do, but you're too scared to do it. Then just do it scared. And I feel like you're a good example of that, to just really look at the bigger picture and what you want to achieve and how not to let that fear stop you. But yeah, and I guess just looking at it, of course there will be some challenges still. Of course, that not everything is linear. The progress won't be linear, but I guess for you at this point, would you say that you're hopeful for what is to come, and what is behind that hope? Like, what made you say that it's something that could be better in the next couple of years, especially in our space right now?
I think what makes me hopeful is I always think of first my Coach Ace, who is a cis man, and he met me with a lot of just inclusion and again, very chillness. And that there are people out there, and they are here in our community. And what makes me hopeful too is all the young people that I see that are very much ready to listen to trans athletes, ready to include us. And yeah, I think it's been really, at least lately, that is part of my journey, it's gotten a little mixed, because I'll be trying out at a team, and they're at least open to me trying out. But then, like, when it goes to the next step of like including me, asking the league to let me play, that's when they get a little like avoidant and like they don't know what to do, right? And I think that part is a little discouraging. But I have to remember I was able to play in women's league. I was able to represent the country in London and be flown to London as a trans woman. And there was just a lot of people that were like, yeah, go ahead. Like, people, when it comes down to it, the people out there, the people in sports, we don't really care. It's really in the media where it's very like, it's very polarizing. But when we're out there, just with the people playing, they're like, oh, this is what happened. And when my team found out I'm trans, a girl walks up to me and says, hey, they said there was a trans player here. Like, are you trans? I was like, yeah, I'm trans. They're like, oh, okay. And now we are teammates, and they're out here assisting me goals. And that's just it. It's like, when it comes down to it, people are chill. People are ready. And I know there's a very violent and loud group, but I think that actually gives me a lot of hope. It's like, the more scared that people are, it tells me like the more that we are in people's consciousness, and that this conversation is ready to be had, right? And yeah, I want people to have the conversation with themselves. It's like, are you ready for trans people to exist? And if not, why not, right? Like, it's fine if you have like, if we are raised in transphobic society, if we have beliefs that make us uncomfortable, let's just explore that, right? Let's not fall into it and just take it as a fact, right? And yeah, I think that's what makes me hopeful. It's like a lot of people are out there that are willing to listen.
That was a guest episode from Go Hard Girls, the Puma podcast show highlighting the stories of women athletes and hosted by Ceej Tantengco. It was written by Lui Morales, edited by Mark Casilian, with production support from Pao Reyes and Isabel Haplit. To hear more from Filipina athletes, look up Go Hard Girls wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Bella Perez Rubio. Thanks for listening.